In the scorching heat of the Afghan mountains, where dust clouds danced like ghosts across the barren landscape, Staff Sergeant Elena Rodriguez crouched behind a crumbling stone wall, her medical bag clutched tightly in one hand and a rifle in the other. Blood stained her uniform, not her own, but that of the 3 wounded soldiers she'd just dragged to safety under heavy enemy fire. What happened next would defy every expectation of what a combat medic was supposed to do, and would earn her a place in military legend that she never sought. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Elena Rodriguez. Never imagined she'd become one of the most feared snipers in her unit. Growing up in a small Texas town, the daughter of a nurse and a high school principal, she was known for her gentle nature and her uncanny ability to heal wounded animals. Her friends called her the bird whisperer because she could nurse injured sparrows back to health with the patience of a saint. Violence was foreign to her world until the day she watched the Twin Towers fall on live television during her senior year of high school. The images of people jumping from burning buildings, of first responders rushing into danger, of ordinary Americans becoming heroes in moments of crisis, changed something fundamental inside Elena. She couldn't shake the feeling that she needed to serve, needed to be someone who ran toward danger to help others, not away from it. Against her parents' wishes, she enlisted in the Army right after graduation, specifically requesting training as a combat medic. "I want to save lives," she told her recruiter, her brown eyes burning with determination. "I want to be the person who brings soldiers home to their families." What Elena didn't know was that her steady hands, keen eyesight, and natural calm under pressure traits that made her an exceptional medic would also make her a deadly accurate marksman. During basic training at Fort Sam Houston, her instructors noticed something unusual about the quiet girl from Texas. While other recruits struggled with marksmanship, Elena consistently hit center mass from distances that impressed even seasoned drill sergeants. Rodriguez, Sergeant First Class Matthews, called out after a particularly impressive shooting session, "Where'd you learn to shoot like that?" Elena shrugged, ejecting the magazine from her M4 carbine. "My grandfather taught me to hunt deer when I was 12. He always said shooting was about breathing and patience, not about being tough or angry." But Elena wasn't interested in becoming a sniper. She'd enlisted to heal, not to kill. She threw herself into her medical training with the same dedication she'd shown to nursing wounded animals back home. She memorized every bone in the human body, every pressure point, every technique for stopping bleeding under combat conditions. Her instructors marveled at her ability to remain calm during high-stress medical simulations, her hands never shaking even when dealing with the most gruesome training scenarios. After completing her advanced individual training, Elena was assigned to the 3rd Infantry Division and deployed to Afghanistan in 2009. The country was a hellscape of improvised explosive devices, sniper fire, and ambushes that could turn a routine patrol into a nightmare in seconds. But Elena thrived in this environment, not because she enjoyed the violence, but because she finally felt like she was fulfilling her purpose. Her first taste of real combat came during a patrol in the Kunar province, a region so dangerous that locals called it the Valley of Death. Elena's squad was conducting a routine sweep of a village suspected of harboring Taliban fighters when the world exploded around them. The distinctive crack of a K-47 fire echoed off the mountain walls as insurgents opened fire from concealed positions. "Medic! Medic!" The cry that would define Elena's military career rang out as Private Johnson took a round to the leg, arterial blood spurting across the dusty ground. Without hesitation, Elena sprinted across 30 yards of open ground, enemy bullets kicking up dirt around her feet, to reach the wounded soldier dot as she worked to stop Johnson's bleeding. Applying a tourniquet with practiced efficiency, she became acutely aware of the tactical situation around her. The enemy fire was coming from a specific building about 200 Yards away, she could tell by the muzzle flashes and the angle of the incoming rounds. Her squad was pinned down, unable to advance or retreat safely. "I need covering fire," Elena called out to her squad leader, Sergeant Martinez, as she finished treating Johnson's wound. "We can't get a clear shot on them," Martinez replied, frustration evident in his voice. "They've got us pinned down good." Elena looked at the wounded soldier she just saved, then at her rifle lying beside her medical bag. In that moment, two parts of her identity, the healer and the warrior, would merge in a way that would define the rest of her military career. She picked up her M4, adjusted the scope, and studied the enemy position with the same methodical precision she used to diagnose medical conditions. "I can see the shooter," she whispered to Martinez. "Second floor, third window from the left. He's got a clear line of sight on our position." What happened next would be talked about in military circles for years to come, and would mark the beginning of Elena Rodriguez's transformation from just a medic into one of the most effective soldier snipers the Army had ever seen. Elena's breathing slowed to an almost meditative rhythm as she settled into a shooting position behind a low wall of stacked stones. The chaos of battle seemed to fade into background noise, the shouts of her squad mates, the intermittent crack of gunfire, even the groans of the wounded soldier beside her became distant and muffled. In this moment, she was channeling every lesson her grandfather had taught her during those quiet mornings in the East Texas woods, hunting white-tailed deer before dawn. "Breathing is everything, Mia," she could hear his gravelly voice in her memory. "You control your breath, you control the shot. The rifle is just an extension of your body." Through her scope, Elena could see the enemy sniper clearly now. He was young, probably no older than she was, with a thick black beard and intense dark eyes. He was methodically working his bolt-action rifle, taking careful aim at her pinned-down squad mates. In different circumstances, Elena might have tried to save his life if he were wounded. But right now, he represented a deadly threat to the soldiers she'd sworn to protect. The enemy sniper was good. Elena could tell by his positioning and his disciplined rate of fire. He wasn't spraying bullets wildly like many insurgent fighters. Instead, he was taking measured shots, trying to pick off her squad mates one by one. She watched him chamber another round and begin to acquire a target. In approximately 15 seconds, another American soldier would be wounded or killed unless she acted. Elena's crosshairs settled on the center of the enemy sniper's chest. Her finger found the trigger, applying just enough pressure to take up the slack without firing. She exhaled slowly, letting half her breath out and holding the rest. Her heart rate slowed. The world became perfectly still. "For Johnson," she whispered, thinking of the soldier whose life she'd just saved. "For all of them." The rifle bucked against her shoulder with a sharp crack that seemed impossibly loud in the sudden silence. Through her scope, Elena watched the enemy sniper jerk backward and disappear from the window. The incoming fire from that position ceased immediately. "Holy shit, Rodriguez!" Sergeant Martinez's voice broke through Elena's concentration. "Did you just—" "Target neutralized," Elena reported matter-of-factly, already scanning for other threats while simultaneously checking on Private Johnson's condition. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, monitoring his pulse and checking his tourniquet. "Johnson's stable. We need to get him to his CCP as soon as we can establish movement." The firefight continued for another 20 minutes, but the removal of the enemy sniper had shifted the tactical balance. Elena's squad was able to maneuver more effectively, eventually forcing the remaining insurgents to withdraw. As they waited for the medical evacuation helicopter, Elena knelt beside Johnson, holding pressure on his wound and talking to him to keep him conscious. "You saved my life twice today," Johnson said weakly, his face pale from blood loss, but his eyes clear. "First with the tourniquet, then by taking out that shooter." Elena shook her head. I just did my job. Both jobs, I guess. But even as she said it, Elena knew something fundamental had changed inside her. The shot she'd taken wasn't just about neutralizing a threat, it was about protecting her patients, her squad, her mission. She'd discovered that sometimes, the best way to save lives was to take one. When they returned to base that evening, word of Elena's actions spread quickly through the compound. A combat medic who could also function as a sniper was an incredibly valuable asset, especially in the kind of small unit operations that characterized much of the fighting in Afghanistan. But Elena was conflicted about the attention. I didn't join the army to kill people, she confided to her bunkmate, Specialist Sarah Chen, as they cleaned their equipment that night. I joined to save them. Chun, a seasoned combat engineer who'd been deployed twice before, looked up from the explosive ordnance disposal equipment she was maintaining. Elena, you did save people today. You saved Johnson, you saved Martinez, you probably saved the whole squad. Sometimes saving lives means making hard choices. That night, Elena lay awake in her narrow bunk, staring at the canvas ceiling of her tent. She thought about the enemy sniper she'd killed, someone's son, perhaps someone's father. She wondered what had driven him to take up arms, what circumstances had led him to that window with a rifle in his hands. But she also thought about Private Johnson, who would return home to his wife and newborn daughter because Elena had acted decisively. Over the following weeks, Elena's reputation grew. Her squad leader began positioning her strategically during patrols, knowing that she could provide both medical support and precision marksmanship as needed. Other medics in the battalion started seeking her advice on combat shooting techniques. Word eventually reached the battalion commander, Lieutenant Colonel Harrison, who called Elena to his office for a conversation that would change the trajectory of her military career. Rodriguez, the colonel said, studying her personnel file, I've been getting some interesting reports about your performance in the field. Your squad leader tells me you're one hell of a shot. Elena stood at attention, unsure how to respond. I do whatever the mission requires, sir. At ease, Sergeant. The colonel leaned back in his chair. I'm not here to criticize you. I'm here to ask you a question. How would you feel about some additional training? Specialized training. Elena's heart rate quickened. She had a feeling. She knew where this conversation was heading, and she wasn't sure how she felt about it. Lieutenant Colonel Harrison's office felt unusually small as Elena stood at ease, her mind racing through the implications of what he might be suggesting. The walls were lined with commendations, unit citations, and photographs of soldiers from various deployments, silent witnesses to countless decisions that had shaped careers and saved lives. Elena's eyes briefly settled on a photo of a female soldier receiving a Bronze Star, wondering if she was looking at her own future. Sir, if you're asking about sniper school, Elena began carefully, I need to be honest with you. My primary responsibility is as a combat medic. That's what I trained for. That's what my squad depends on me for. Colonel Harrison nodded, pulling out a thick folder marked with Elena's name. I've read your file, Rodriguez. Your medical performance ratings are exceptional. Your squad leader reports that you've saved more lives than any medic he's worked with in 3 deployments. But he also reports that your marksmanship skills are among the best he's ever seen. And that includes some soldiers who went through formal sniper training. Elena shifted uncomfortably. The praise felt good, but it also felt like pressure she wasn't sure she wanted. Sir, I appreciate the confidence, but I'm not sure I want to be primarily a sniper. I became a medic because I wanted to save lives, not take them. What if I told you that you could do both? The colonel leaned forward, his expression serious. What if I told you that there's a role where your medical training and your shooting skills would make you one of the most valuable soldiers in this theater of operations? Elena's curiosity was piqued despite her reservations. Sir, have you ever heard of a sniper-medic hybrid role? Harrison asked. It's not common, but it's incredibly effective in certain situations. You maintain your primary aim as a combat medic, but you receive additional training that allows you to provide long-range precision fire when necessary. Think about what happened last week. You saved Johnson's life with medical treatment. Then, you saved the entire squad by neutralizing the enemy sniper. Elena thought about that firefight, remembering the weight of decision in that moment when she'd picked up her rifle. Sir, that was a specific tactical situation. I'm not sure I want to make killing people a regular part of my job description. Rodriguez, let me ask you something, the colonel said, standing up and walking to the window that overlooked the base's training area. How many soldiers do you think that enemy sniper would have killed if you hadn't stopped him? How many American families would be planning funerals right now instead of welcome home parties? Elena didn't answer, but she knew the colonel was right. The enemy sniper had been methodical, disciplined, and deadly. Left unchecked, he would have continued picking off her squad mates until they were all casualties. I'm not asking you to become a cold-blooded killer, Harrison continued. I'm asking you to become the most complete soldier possible. Your medical skills save lives directly. Your shooting skills save lives by eliminating threats. Together, they make you someone who can turn the tide of a battle while keeping your own people alive. Elena considered this for a long moment. She thought about her grandfather's hunting lessons, about the patience and precision he'd taught her. She thought about the oath she'd taken as a medic to first do no harm. But she also thought about the oath she'd taken as a soldier to protect and defend her country and her fellow soldiers. Sir, if I were to consider this additional training, would I still be assigned as the primary medic for my squad? Absolutely, Harrison replied. Your medical responsibilities would remain your top priority. The sniper training would be supplemental, something you could draw on when the tactical situation required it. You'd essentially be our Swiss Army knife capable of performing multiple critical functions as the mission demanded. Elena thought about Specialist Chun's words from the night before about making hard choices to save lives. She thought about Private Johnson, who was currently recovering at the base hospital and would soon be returning to his family. She thought about all the other soldiers who might need her medical skills in the months ahead and all the threats she might be able to neutralize before they could harm her people. Sir, I need to ask, would this training change how my squad sees me? I don't want them to stop trusting me as their medic because they start thinking of me as a sniper first. Colonel Harrison smiled. Rodriguez, your squad already trusts you with their lives. They've seen you risk everything to drag wounded soldiers to safety under fire. They've seen you work miracles with a medical bag. Adding another skill to your toolkit isn't going to diminish their respect for what you can do. It's going to increase it. Elena took a deep breath. She thought about why she'd enlisted in the first place, about her desire to serve and protect. Maybe there was more than one way to heal, more than one way to preserve life. When would the training begin, sir? There's a specialized course starting next month at Fort Benning, Harrison said, returning to his desk and pulling out another folder. It's a hybrid program designed specifically for soldiers like you medics. Engineers, forward observer soldiers with critical primary specialties who also show exceptional marksmanship aptitude. You'd retain your medical NAS but gain additional qualifications that would make you invaluable in small unit operations. Elena thought about her grandfather one more time, remembering something else he'd taught her during those hunting trips. Mia, he'd said, sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do is make a hard choice quickly and precisely. Hesitation causes suffering. Sir, I'll do it, Elena said finally. But I want it understood that I'm still a medic first. That's my primary identity, my primary mission. Understood, Sergeant. And Rodriguez? Harrison looked up from the paperwork he was already filling out. I think you're going to discover that being a healer and being a warrior aren't as different as you think. Fort Benning, Georgia, felt like stepping into a different world from the dusty mountains of Afghanistan. The humid Georgia air clung to Elena's skin as she reported to the specialized training facility that would become her second home for the next 8 weeks. The program she was entering was classified as tactical medicine and precision, marksmanship integration, a mouthful of military jargon that essentially meant teaching soldiers to save lives and take lives with equal precision. Elena's class consisted of 12 soldiers from various specialties, 3 combat medics like herself, 2 forward observers, 3 combat engineers, 2 intelligence specialists, and 2 military police officers. What they all had in common was exceptional marksmanship scores and critical primary skills that their commanders were reluctant to reassign to traditional sniper roles. Their instructor was Master Sergeant Patricia Viper Williams, a legendary figure in Army sniper circles who had over 200 confirmed kills across 4 deployments. Standing barely 5 feet tall with graying hair pulled back in a regulation bun, she looked more like someone's grandmother than one of the deadliest snipers in military history. But when she spoke, her voice carried the authority of someone who had stared death in the face and never blinked. "Ladies and gentlemen," Williams began on their first morning, "you are not here to become snipers. You are here to become more complete soldiers. Your primary job is still your primary job. But when the situation demands it, you will be capable of reaching out and touching someone from distances that will make the enemy think twice about threatening your people." Elena raised her hand. "Master Sergeant, how do we balance the ethical considerations of our primary roles with the new responsibilities you're teaching us?" Williams studied Elena for a moment, then nodded approvingly. "Good question, Rodriguez. You're a medic, correct?" Elena nodded. "Tell me, what's the first rule of combat medicine?" "Triage," Elena replied. "Save the most lives possible with the resources available." "Exactly. Sometimes that means choosing not to treat someone who's beyond help so you can save 3 others who aren't. Sometimes it means taking out a threat so that threat can't create more casualties you'll have to treat. The ethics don't change. You're still trying to save the maximum number of lives. You're just expanding your toolkit." The training was unlike anything Elena had experienced. The physical demands were brutal. Long-range shooting requires extraordinary physical conditioning to maintain stability and precision over extended periods. They spent hours in uncomfortable positions, learning to control their breathing, heart rate, and even their digestive systems to avoid movement that could throw off a shot. But it was the mental training that challenged Elena most. Traditional sniper training focused on patience, observation, and the psychological aspects of taking human life from a distance. For Elena, who had dedicated her career to preserving life, the psychological shift was profound. "Distance changes everything," Williams explained during a lecture on sniper psychology. "When you're treating a wounded enemy soldier, you see their humanity up close. When you're engaging a target at 800 meters, you see a threat to be neutralized. Both perspectives are valid, both are necessary, and both require mental discipline." Elena struggled with this concept initially. During her first week of live-fire exercises, she found herself hesitating at the moment of firing, her medical training instinctively making her think about the human target she was engaging, even though it was just a paper silhouette at the range. "Rodriguez," Williams called out after Elena missed 3 consecutive shots that should have been easy for someone with her marksmanship background. "What's going on in that head of yours?" Elena lowered her rifle, frustrated with herself. "I keep thinking about treating wounded enemy fighters, Master Sergeant. About how they're human beings with families, just like our guys." Williams nodded understanding. "That's not a weakness, Rodriguez. That's what makes you a good medic and what will make you a better sniper. You understand the weight of what you're doing. But here's what you need to understand. Every enemy fighter you don't neutralize when you have the opportunity, might be the one who kills or wounds soldiers you could save. Your medical skills are about preserving life. Your shooting skills are also about preserving life, the lives of your people. That night, Elena called her parents for the first time since arriving at Fort Benning. Her mother, a registered nurse, could hear the conflict in her daughter's voice, even over the poor connection. "Mia, what's troubling you?" her mother asked in the mixture of Spanish and English that had colored Elena's childhood. Elena found herself pouring out her concerns about the training, about the ethical complexity of being both a healer and a killer. Her mother listened patiently, as she always had. "Elena," her mother said finally, "do you remember when you were little and you found that injured hawk in our backyard?" Elena smiled despite her mood. "Of course. You helped me nurse it back to health." "Do you remember what happened when the neighbor's cat tried to attack it while it was still recovering?" Elena did remember. She had grabbed a stick and chased the cat away, protecting the injured bird until it was strong enough to fly again. "I scared the cat off." "You used force to protect something vulnerable," her mother said gently. "You didn't hurt the cat, but you were willing to if it meant saving the hawk. Sometimes protecting life means being willing to stop those who would take it away." The conversation with her mother proved to be a turning point. Elena began to understand that her role as a sniper medic wasn't about choosing between healing and killing. It was about using every tool available to preserve life. Sometimes that meant sutures and 4 fluids. Sometimes it meant a precisely placed bullet. Her shooting improved dramatically after that conversation. By the end of her 4th week, Elena was consistently hitting targets at ranges exceeding 800 meters. Her groups tight enough to satisfy even Master Sergeant Williams' exacting standards. "Better," Williams commented after Elena put 5 consecutive rounds through the X-ring of a target at 1,000 meters. "Now you're thinking like a sniper medic, not just a medic who happens to shoot well." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Elena's confidence grew with each passing day. She learned to calculate wind speed and direction by observing grass movement and dust patterns. She mastered the mathematics of ballistics, learning to compensate for bullet drop and wind drift at extreme ranges. Most importantly, she learned to compartmentalize her emotions, to set aside her natural empathy when the tactical situation demanded precision and ruthlessness. The halfway point of Elena's training marked a significant shift in the program's focus. Where the first 4 weeks had concentrated on individual marksmanship skills and psychological preparation, the second half emphasized tactical integration, learning to seamlessly blend sniper capabilities with primary military occupational specialties in realistic combat scenarios. Elena's first major test came during a simulated combat exercise designed to replicate the complex, multifaceted challenges of modern asymmetric warfare. The scenario placed her 12-person class in the role of a reinforced squad tasked with securing a village suspected of harboring high-value targets while providing humanitarian assistance to civilian populations caught in the crossfire. "This is where theory meets reality," Master Sergeant Williams explained as they prepared for the 72-hour field exercise. "You'll be functioning in your primary roles while maintaining sniper overwatch capabilities. Rodriguez, you'll be the primary medic for the squad, but you'll also be responsible for providing precision fire support from designated positions." The training village was a marvel of military simulation technology, complete with role players acting as civilians, opposing forces using sophisticated training ammunition, and casualties requiring real medical treatment for simulated wounds. Elena would have to transition seamlessly between treating wounded soldiers and engaging enemy targets, sometimes within minutes of each other. The exercise began before dawn on a humid Georgia morning. Elena's squad was tasked with establishing a patrol base in the village center while she set up a medical aid station. capable of treating both military personnel and civilian casualties. Within the first hour, the complexity of her dual role became apparent. Medic, medic. The familiar call echoed through the training village as Specialist Jackson took simulated gunfire during the initial patrol. Elena sprinted across 50 meters of open ground, her medical bag bouncing against her hip and her rifle slung across her back. As she began treating Jackson's simulated suck-in chest wound, her trained eyes automatically cataloged the tactical situation around her. The opposing forces had established a strongpoint in a two-story building approximately 300 meters from her position. Their simulated gunfire was accurate and disciplined, effectively pinning down 2/3 of her squad. As Elena worked to stabilize Jackson, she realized that the enemy position would make it nearly impossible to evacuate him safely to the casualty collection point. "I need to move Jackson to cover," Elena reported to her squad leader over the radio. "But I can't do it with that strongpoint active. I can see at least 2 shooters in the upper floor." "Roger that, Rodriguez. Can you get a clear shot from your position?" Elena glanced up from her patient, her mind automatically calculating angles, distances, and sight lines. "Negative from here, but if I can get to the building 20 meters north of my position, I'll have a clear line of sight." "Do it. We'll cover your movement." Elena quickly applied a pressure dressing to Jackson's simulated wound and injected him with a training dose of morphine. "You're going to be fine," she told him, checking his pulse and pupils. "I need to neutralize a threat, then I'll be right back to finish treating you." What happened next was a perfect demonstration of the tactical flexibility Elena had been training for. She low-crawled to the designated building, set up a hasty firing position, and engaged the enemy strongpoint with her M24 sniper weapon system. Her first shot eliminated the primary threat, allowing her squad mates to maneuver more effectively. Her second shot, taken less than 30 seconds later, neutralized the remaining enemy fighter. With the immediate threat eliminated, Elena returned to Jackson's position and completed his treatment, preparing him for evacuation to the rear. The entire sequence from initial medical response to threat neutralization to completed treatment took less than 8 minutes. "Outstanding work, Rodriguez," the exercise controller commented over the radio. "You've just demonstrated textbook tactical integration." But the exercise was far from over. Over the next 2 days, Elena found herself constantly switching between her roles as medic and sniper. She treated civilian casualties caught in crossfire while simultaneously providing overwatch for evacuation routes. She engaged enemy snipers, who were targeting her aid station while keeping wounded soldiers stable during extended firefights. The most challenging moment came during the final phase of the exercise. Elena was treating a simulated mass casualty event, multiple wounded soldiers and civilians requiring immediate attention, when enemy forces launched a coordinated attack on the village center. She found herself in the impossible position of having critical patients who needed immediate medical attention while enemy snipers, positioned in the surrounding hills, began picking off anyone who moved in the open. "Rodriguez, we've got enemy sniper fire from the ridgeline," her squad leader reported over increasingly chaotic radio traffic. "Multiple casualties. Can't move anyone safely until that threat is neutralized." Elena looked at the wounded soldiers around her, 3 requiring immediate attention to prevent death, 2 more needing urgent treatment to prevent permanent disability. Under normal circumstances, as a medic, her duty would be clear: stay with the patients and continue treatment. But as a sniper medic, she had additional responsibilities. "I can see muzzle flashes from 2 positions on the ridge," Elena reported, having automatically noted the enemy fire while treating her patients. "Give me 2 minutes to stabilize these critical cases. Then I'll need someone to take over while I deal with the snipers." Elena worked with focused intensity, applying tourniquets, starting 4 lines, and administering medications with the speed and precision that only comes from extensive training and real-world experience. Once her patients were stable enough to survive a brief period without direct medical attention, she grabbed her rifle and moved to a position where she could engage the enemy snipers. The shots she took that day, simulated though they were, represented the culmination of her training. At ranges exceeding 600 meters, under combat stress, while mentally tracking the medical status of multiple patients, Elena engaged and eliminated both enemy snipers with shots that Master Sergeant Williams later described as textbook perfect. Elena's return to Afghanistan after completing her specialized training felt like coming home to a familiar but changed world. The landscape looked the same: dusty mountains stretching toward hostile horizons, forward operating bases that seemed to exist in defiance of the hostile environment surrounding them. But Elena herself was fundamentally different. She carried the same medical bag that had saved dozens of lives during her first deployment, but now she also carried a customized M24 sniper weapon system that represented her evolution from healer to guardian. Her squad greeted her return with a mixture of curiosity and pride. Sergeant Martinez, who had witnessed Elena's first combat kill during that firefight in Kunar province, immediately noticed the changes in her bearing and equipment. "Rodriguez, you look different," he observed as Elena settled back into the squad. Bathe that had been her home before her training. More focused, dangerous. Elena smiled as she arranged her gear, carefully organizing both her medical supplies and her precision shooting equipment. "I'm still the same medic you left behind, Sergeant. I've just added some new capabilities to better protect the squad." Private Johnson, the soldier whose life Elena had saved during that first firefight, was also there to welcome her back. He had recovered fully from his leg wound and returned to active duty while Elena was at Fort Benning. His presence served as a tangible reminder of why Elena had chosen to expand her skill set. "Doc," Johnson said, using the informal title that medics earn from their soldiers, "I heard you went to some kind of super-secret sniper school. Does this mean you're not going to be our medic anymore?" Elena looked at the young soldier who represented everything she fought to protect. "Johnson, I'm still your medic. That will never change. But now, when someone threatens my patients, I have more options for dealing with them." Elena's first mission after returning from training came just 3 days later. Intelligence had identified a Taliban command structure operating from a village in the Paktika province, and Elena's unit was tasked with conducting a raid to capture or eliminate high-value targets while minimizing civilian casualties. It was exactly the type of complex operation where Elena's hybrid skills would be most valuable. The mission briefing revealed the tactical challenges they would face. The target village was built into a mountainside, with buildings positioned to provide overlapping fields of fire for defenders. Civilian populations were mixed throughout the target area, making precise identification and engagement critical. Most significantly, the village included a small medical clinic that might contain wounded fighters, civilians, or both. "Rodriguez," Lieutenant Colonel Harrison addressed Elena during the briefing, "you'll be our primary medic for this operation, but I'm also positioning you to provide overwatch for the main assault element. Your position will give you line of sight into the village center and the medical clinic specifically." Elena studied the aerial photographs and terrain models, automatically identifying potential shooting positions and calculating distances to likely targets. "Sir, I recommend positioning me on Hill 247, approximately 800 meters northeast of the village center. From there, I can cover both the main approach route and the clinic, and I'll have a clear evacuation route if we need to extract casualties to higher medical care." The mission launched at 0300 hours under a moonless sky that provided excellent concealment for the approaching American forces. Elena moved with 3 other soldiers to establish her overwatch position while the main assault element approached the village from the south. By 0430, She was in position with her rifle trained on the village center, her radio tuned to both the assault frequency and the medical evacuation network. The first sign of trouble came when the assault element was still 200 meters from the village perimeter. Elena's scope revealed movement in several buildings, armed figures taking defensive positions. Through her night vision optics, she could clearly identify at least 6 fighters with AK-47 rifles and RPGs positioning themselves to ambush the approaching American forces. Overwatch to assault leader, Elena transmitted over the radio. I have eyes on multiple armed individuals in defensive positions. Recommend altering approach route to avoid ambush. But before the assault element could adjust their approach, the situation escalated dramatically. A wounded Afghan civilian, apparently caught in crossfire from an earlier engagement, stumbled into the village center calling for help in Pashto. Elena could see that the man was bleeding heavily from what appeared to be an abdominal wound, exactly the kind of injury that would be fatal without immediate treatment. This presented Elena with an impossible choice. As a medic, her training and instincts demanded that she render aid to any wounded person, regardless of nationality or allegiance. But as a sniper providing overwatch, her responsibility was to protect the assault element from the armed fighters, who were clearly preparing to engage American forces. The wounded civilian collapsed approximately 50 meters from the building where Elena had identified the largest concentration of enemy fighters. If she left her position to render medical aid, as every fiber of her medical training demanded, she would abandon her overwatch responsibility and potentially allow the ambush to succeed. If she remained in position to protect the assault element, an innocent civilian would likely bleed to death within her sight. Elena made a decision that would define her understanding of her dual role forever. Assault leader, this is Overwatch. I have a wounded civilian in the open who requires immediate medical attention. I'm going to eliminate the immediate threats, then move to render aid. Adjust your approach to give me 3 minutes. Roger, Overwatch, will hold position. What happened next was a masterpiece of tactical precision that would be studied in military academies for years to come. Elena engaged 6 separate targets in less than 90 seconds. Each shot carefully calculated to neutralize threats, while avoiding any possibility of hitting the wounded civilian or causing collateral damage to nearby buildings that might contain non-combatants. Her first shot eliminated the RPG gunner, who posed the greatest threat to the assault element. Her second and third shots, taken in quick succession, neutralized 2 rifle fighters who had clear fields of fire on the civilian's position. The remaining 3 targets required more complex shots due to their positions and the need to avoid hitting civilian structures. But Elena's training proved adequate to the challenge. With the immediate threats neutralized, Elena transitioned seamlessly from sniper to medic. She sprinted down the hillside to the wounded civilian, her medical bag bouncing against her hip as she covered the 300 meters in less than 2 minutes. The wounded man was barely conscious, his clothing soaked with blood from what Elena quickly diagnosed as a penetrating abdominal wound with possible internal bleeding. Working by the light of a red-filtered flashlight, Elena applied direct pressure to the wound, started an emergency 4-line, and administered morphine for pain management. Her hands moved with the practiced efficiency of someone who had treated hundreds of similar wounds, even as her eyes continued to scan for additional threats that might emerge from the surrounding buildings. This is Doc Rodriguez, she transmitted over the medical evacuation frequency. I have 1 adult male civilian with penetrating abdominal trauma, possible internal bleeding, requiring immediate surgical intervention. Recommend emergency evacuation to Level 3 facility. The wounded civilian Elena learned later that his name was Ahmed and he was a shopkeeper caught in the wrong place at the wrong time, survived his injuries, and made a full recovery. But more importantly for Elena's understanding of her role, The entire assault element completed their mission without a single American casualty. The Taliban command structure they had come to capture was neutralized, and several high-value targets were taken into custody for intelligence exploitation. Rodriguez, Lieutenant Colonel Harrison said during the post-mission debrief, "What you did tonight was extraordinary. You eliminated 6 separate threats in 90 seconds, then provided life-saving medical care to a civilian casualty, all while maintaining overwatch for the assault element. That's exactly the kind of tactical flexibility we hope to achieve. With your training." Elena nodded, but she was thinking about something Master Sergeant Williams had told her during training. The mark of a truly effective sniper medic isn't the number of targets you engage or the number of lives you save individually. It's your ability to make split-second decisions that maximize the preservation of life on the battlefield. That night, as Elena cleaned her rifle and reorganized her medical supplies, she realized that she had finally found the balance between her 2 roles. She was no longer conflicted about being both a healer and a warrior. She understood now that both roles served the same fundamental purpose: protecting innocent life and ensuring that the soldiers under her care returned home safely to their families. The wounded shopkeeper she had treated sent word through local contacts that he wanted to thank the American medic who had saved his life. Elena never met him again, but she kept the message he sent. "You are a guardian angel who carries both mercy and justice. May Allah protect you as you have protected others." Elena tucked that message into her medical bag, where it joined the photos of every soldier she had treated and every threat she had neutralized. Each represented a life preserved, a family kept whole, a future protected. Whether through sutures or through crosshairs, Elena Rodriguez had found her calling as the guardian angel of the battlefield. 3 months after the successful village raid, Elena faced what would become the defining moment of her military career. Intelligence reports indicated that a high-value Taliban commander known as the Ghost had been wounded in a coalition airstrike and was seeking medical treatment at a remote compound in the Hindu Kush Mountains. The irony wasn't lost on Elena. She would be hunting a wounded enemy who, like her patients, needed medical care to survive. The mission parameters were complex and contradictory. The target compound was believed to house not only the wounded Taliban commander, but also several civilian families who had been coerced into providing shelter. Coalition forces needed to either capture or eliminate the high-value target while ensuring the safety of non-combatants and gathering intelligence about Taliban medical supply networks. "This is going to be our most challenging operation yet," Lieutenant Colonel Harrison explained during the pre-mission briefing. "The target is wounded, but extremely dangerous. He's reportedly accompanied by at least 12 veteran fighters, and intelligence suggests they're prepared to use civilian shields to protect him." Elena studied the reconnaissance photos of the compound, automatically calculating distances and identifying potential shooting positions. The target building was a traditional Afghan compound with high walls and multiple structures, positioned on a mountainside that provided natural defensive advantages, but also offered excellent overwatch positions for a skilled marksman. "Sir," Elena interjected during the briefing, "if the target is wounded, there's a possibility he might genuinely need medical attention. How do we handle a situation where my medical training conflicts with the mission objectives?" Harrison paused, considering the complexity of the question. "Rodriguez, your primary objective is the success of this mission and the safety of American forces. But I trust your judgment to make the right calls in the field. If you can gather intelligence while providing medical treatment, that's a win-win scenario." The mission launched during the howling snowstorm that provided excellent concealment but created challenging conditions for both movement and marksmanship. Elena's team consisted of 12 operators, 8 assault specialists, 2 intelligence officers, 1 communications specialist, and Elena herself functioning as both medic and precision marksman. They established their assault position under Cover of darkness, with Elena positioned on a ridge approximately 600 meters from the target compound. Through her scope, she could see the compound clearly despite the falling snow. Thermal imaging revealed at least 15 individuals inside. The main building, with several more scattered throughout secondary structures. Overwatch in position, Elena reported over the radio. I have thermal signatures indicating multiple occupants. Recommend waiting for improved visibility before initiating assault. But the decision was taken out of their hands when one of the thermal signatures began moving erratically inside the main building. Elena's medical training allowed her to recognize the movement pattern. Immediately, someone was having a medical emergency, possibly a seizure or cardiac event. Assault leader, this is Overwatch. I'm seeing medical emergency indicators inside the target building. Someone needs immediate attention or they're going to die. Roger, Overwatch. Are you certain? Elena watched the thermal signature collapse and remain motionless while other figures gathered around it. Positive. Based on movement patterns, someone just went into cardiac arrest or suffered a similar life-threatening event. The assault leader faced an impossible decision. If they delayed the assault to allow medical treatment, they risked losing the high-value target to the medical emergency or giving defenders time to establish better positions. If they proceeded immediately, they might end up assaulting a compound where their primary target was already dead. All elements, this is assault leader, we're moving now. Overwatch, provide cover and be prepared to render medical assistance once we secure the compound. Elena watched through her scope as the assault element approached the compound walls. Everything seemed to be proceeding according to plan until the lead breacher triggered an improvised explosive device that had been buried in the snow near the main gate. The explosion threw 2 soldiers backward and immediately turned the tactical situation into chaos. IED. ID. We have casualties. The radio crackled with urgent reports as Elena automatically shifted from Overwatch mode to medical emergency response. This is Doc Rodriguez. I'm moving to casualty position. Maintain Overwatch on the compound while I treat the wounded. Elena's. Sprint down the mountainside through knee-deep snow while carrying both medical equipment and precision shooting gear was a testament to the physical conditioning she'd developed during her specialized training. She reached the wounded soldiers within 90 seconds of the explosion, immediately beginning triage assessment under continued enemy fire from the compound. Sergeant Williams had suffered severe shrapnel wounds to his legs and was losing blood rapidly. Specialist Martinez had been thrown against the compound wall and was unconscious with possible traumatic brain injury. Both required immediate medical intervention to prevent death or permanent disability. As Elena worked to stabilize Williams with tourniquets and pressure dressings, enemy fire from the compound continued to pin down the assault element. She could see muzzle flashes from at least 4 positions inside the compound walls, effectively preventing the team from completing their mission or safely evacuating the wounded. I need covering fire to finish treating these casualties, Elena called over the radio while starting an emergency 4 line on Williams. But I also need someone to neutralize those firing positions, or we're all going to be casualties. The assault leader's response revealed the tactical dilemma they faced. Rodriguez, we can't get clear shots on those positions from our current location. Can you provide precision fire from your treatment position? Elena looked down at Williams, whose life depended on her continued medical attention, then at Martinez, who needed immediate evacuation to prevent permanent brain damage. Then she looked at the compound walls where enemy fighters continued to engage her teammates with deadly effect. In that moment, Elena understood that she was facing the ultimate test of her hybrid training. She needed to simultaneously save the lives of the soldiers under her care, while eliminating the threats that endangered the entire unit. There was no time to choose between her roles as medic and sniper. She would have to perform both functions simultaneously. Elena's mind raced through tactical calculations while her hands continued their life-saving work on Sergeant Williams. The compound was 150 meters away, close enough for accurate rifle fire, but she would need to shoot while maintaining medical treatment on 2 critically wounded soldiers. It was exactly the kind of impossible scenario that her specialized training had been designed to address. "Martinez, can you hear me?" Elena called to the unconscious specialist while checking his pupils for signs of brain trauma. His pupils were equal and reactive, a good sign, but he remained unconscious from the blast concussion. Williams was stable for the moment, but both soldiers needed evacuation to higher medical care within the next 20 minutes or they would likely suffer permanent complications. Enemy fire continued to pour from the compound, with at least 4 different firing positions maintaining disciplined, accurate fire that kept the assault element pinned down. Elena could see her teammates pressed against available cover, unable to advance or retreat safely. "Assault leader, this is Rodriguez," Elena transmitted while applying hemostatic gauze to Williams' worst shrapnel wound. "I need 3 minutes to stabilize these casualties, then I can engage the firing positions. But I'll need someone to monitor Williams' vital signs while I shoot." "Roger that, Rodriguez." Sending Peterson to assist with medical. Corporal Peterson, a combat engineer with basic medical training, low-crawled through the snow to Elena's position. "Doc, what do you need me to do?" Elena quickly briefed Peterson on both soldiers' conditions and the medical interventions she had already performed. "Williams needs constant pressure on this wound, and watch his airway. The blast might have caused internal injuries. Martinez is stable but unconscious. If either one's condition changes, you call me immediately, regardless of what I'm doing." With Peterson maintaining medical care for her patients, Elena transitioned to her sniper role. She moved to a shooting position that gave her clear lines of sight to the compound, while keeping her close enough to quickly return to her medical duties if needed. The snow was still falling, creating challenging conditions for precision shooting. But Elena had trained for exactly these circumstances. Through her scope, Elena identified the 4 primary firing positions. The first was a window in the main building's 2nd floor, approximately 160 meters away with a slight uphill angle. The second was a courtyard position behind a low wall, range 145 meters. The third and fourth positions were in outbuildings flanking the main structure, ranges 170 and 155 meters respectively. Elena's first shot eliminated the courtyard position, catching the enemy fighter as he exposed himself to acquire a target. The sound of her rifle seemed impossibly loud in the snowy silence, and she immediately shifted position to avoid return fire while chambering another round. "One down," she reported over the radio while maintaining visual contact with her patients. Peterson gave her a thumbs up, indicating that both wounded soldiers remained stable. Her second shot targeted the window position in the main building. This was a more challenging shot due to the angle and the fact that the enemy fighter was partially concealed behind interior walls. Elena waited patiently for him to expose himself enough for a clean shot, remembering Master Sergeant Williams' instruction about the importance of patience in sniper operations. When the opportunity came, Elena's shot was perfect center mass, through the window opening, eliminating the threat immediately. She could see the assault element beginning to maneuver more aggressively now that half the enemy firing positions had been neutralized. "2 down. Peterson, how are my patients?" "Williams is stable, Doc. Martinez is starting to wake up, but he seems confused." Elena's third shot targeted the left outbuilding, but this enemy fighter had observed the fate of his comrades and was being much more cautious about exposure. Elena waited for nearly 2 minutes, maintaining her shooting position while constantly glancing back at her patients to monitor their condition. Finally, the enemy fighter made a tactical error, exposing his shoulder and part of his torso as he attempted to engage the advancing assault element. Elena's shot struck him center mass, immediately ending his ability to contribute to the fight. 3 down. 1 position remaining. The final enemy fighter, positioned in the right outbuilding, had apparently decided that discretion was the better part of valor. Elena watched through her scope as he abandoned his position and attempted to flee toward the rear of the compound. It was a long shot nearly 200 meters through falling snow with a moving target, but Elena had trained for exactly this scenario. She led the running figure by approximately 18 inches, accounting for his speed and the wind conditions, and squeezed the trigger with the same steady pressure she used when starting an IV line. The target dropped immediately, ending the firefight. All threats neutralized, Elena reported, immediately returning to her patients. Williams was maintaining stable vital signs, but Martinez was now conscious and complaining of severe headache and nausea, classic symptoms of concussion that required careful monitoring. "Outstanding work, Rodriguez," the assault leader reported as his team moved to secure the compound. "You just eliminated 4 separate threats while maintaining medical care for 2 critical casualties. That's exactly the kind of tactical integration we need." But Elena's work was far from finished. As the compound was secured and the assault element began their search for intelligence and the high-value target, Elena continued treating Williams and Martinez while preparing them for medical evacuation. The helicopter extraction would arrive within 10 minutes, and both soldiers needed to be stable enough for transport to the nearest field hospital. More significantly, Elena learned that the thermal signature she had observed having a medical emergency was indeed the high-value target they had come to capture. The Ghost had suffered a heart attack during the firefight and was found unconscious but alive inside the main building. "Rodriguez," Lieutenant Colonel Harrison's voice came over the radio. "We're going to need you to provide medical stabilization for the high-value target during transport. Can you handle treating an enemy combatant while managing your other patients?" Elena looked at the 3 men who would soon be under her medical care: 2 American soldiers wounded in service to their country, and 1 Taliban commander responsible for the deaths of dozens of coalition forces. Her medical oath demanded that she treat all 3 with equal dedication to preserving life. "Roger that, sir. I'll treat all 3 patients according to their medical needs, regardless of allegiance." The medical evacuation helicopter arrived. In a whirlwind of snow and rotor wash, its crew already prepared for the complex patient load Elena had described over the radio. 3 patients with vastly different medical needs and completely different relationships to the American soldiers who had risked their lives to reach them. As Elena supervised the loading of Sergeant Williams and Specialist Martinez onto stretchers, she caught her first close look at the man known as the Ghost. He was younger than she had expected, probably in his early 30s, with the lean build and weathered face of someone who had spent years fighting in Afghanistan's harsh mountains. Despite being unconscious from his cardiac event, his hands showed the calluses and scars of a man who had lived by violence. Intelligence reports indicated he was responsible for coordinating attacks that had killed or wounded over 60 coalition soldiers in the past 2 years. "Doc, what's the medical status on the HVT?" asked Captain Stevens, the intelligence officer who would be accompanying Elena on the helicopter to conduct preliminary interrogation once the prisoner was stable. Elena checked the Taliban commander's pulse and blood pressure while connecting him to a portable cardiac monitor. He suffered a significant cardiac event, probably a myocardial infarction triggered by stress and underlying heart disease. He's stable for now, but he needs immediate cardiac intervention at a level 3 facility or he's going to die. "Are we talking minutes, hours, or days?" Stevens pressed. Elena studied the cardiac monitor readings, drawing on her medical training to provide an accurate prognosis. Maybe 6 to 8 hours before he suffers another, potentially fatal cardiac event. He needs a cardiac catheterization lab and probably emergency surgery. As the helicopter lifted off from the snowy mountainside, Elena found herself in the surreal position of providing intensive medical care to 3 patients who represented the complexity of modern warfare. Williams and Martinez, her wounded comrades, received her attention with the dedication and skill she had always brought to caring for American soldiers. But the Taliban commander required the same level of medical expertise if he was going to survive to provide the intelligence that might save other American lives. "This feels wrong, Doc," Peterson said quietly as Elena adjusted the Taliban commander's 4 fluids and cardiac medications. "This guy has killed a lot of our people. Why are we working so hard to keep him alive?" Elena had been expecting this question, and she had been asking herself the same thing during the helicopter ride. "Because that's what separates us from them," she replied, checking the commander's blood pressure again. "We treat wounded enemies because it's the right thing to do, and because the intelligence he might provide could save American lives down the road." But Elena's internal conflict ran deeper than her professional response suggested. Every medical intervention she performed, every dose of cardiac medication, every adjustment to his 4-line, every check of his vital signs represented an investment of her skills and knowledge in preserving the life of someone who had dedicated his existence to killing American soldiers. The moral complexity deepened when the Taliban commander regained consciousness during the flight. His eyes opened slowly, and Elena could see the moment when he realized he was receiving medical care from an American soldier. His expression shifted from confusion to suspicion to something that might have been gratitude. "American doctor," he said in heavily accented English, his voice weak from the cardiac event. "Why do you help me?" Elena continued monitoring his cardiac rhythm while considering her answer. "Because you're wounded and I'm a medic. That's what I do." The commander studied Elena's face, perhaps seeing something in her expression that convinced him of her sincerity. "I have killed many of your soldiers," he said quietly. "You know this?" Elena nodded. "I know who you are. Then why?" Elena found herself thinking about Master Sergeant Williams' lessons about the moral framework that guided American military operations. "Because treating wounded enemies is part of what makes us the good guys," she said finally. "Even when it's hard, especially when it's hard." The Taliban commander closed his eyes, apparently processing this concept. When he opened them again, he looked directly at Elena. "You are different than I expected," he said. "Your government sends you to kill us, but you also heal us." "I don't represent my government in this helicopter," Elena replied, checking his pulse again. "I represent the idea that every human life has value, even when that life belongs to someone I disagree with." The remainder of the flight passed in relative silence, with Elena dividing her attention between 3 patients who each required different levels of medical intervention. Williams was stable and would make a full recovery. Martinez was showing improvement from his concussion and would likely return to duty within a few weeks. The Taliban commander was stable but would require significant cardiac surgery to survive. When they reached the field hospital, Elena supervised the transfer of all 3 patients to the emergency department, providing detailed medical reports to the receiving physicians. As she watched the Taliban commander being wheeled into the cardiac treatment area, Captain Stevens approached her with the question she had been dreading. "Rodriguez, based on your medical assessment, do you think he'll survive long enough to provide useful intelligence?" Elena looked at the man she had just spent 2 hours trying to keep alive, knowing that the intelligence he might provide could lead to the capture or killing of other Taliban fighters, possibly preventing attacks that would wound or kill more American soldiers. If he gets the cardiac surgery he needs, yes, he should make a full recovery and be available for interrogation within 48 to 72 hours. Stevens nodded. "Good work, Rodriguez. You may have just saved more American lives than you realize." As Elena cleaned her medical equipment and prepared to return to her unit, she reflected on the strange moral calculus of warfare. In the span of a single mission, She had eliminated 4 enemy fighters with precision rifle fire while simultaneously saving the life of their commander with advanced medical care. Both actions served the same ultimate purpose: protecting American soldiers and advancing American interests. But the personal cost of maintaining this moral balance was becoming increasingly clear to Elena. Each decision to heal or harm required her to weigh complex ethical considerations while operating under extreme stress and time pressure. 6 months after the mountain compound operation, Elena stood in the Pentagon's Hall of Heroes, wearing her dress blue uniform with ribbons and decorations that told the story of her extraordinary service. The Silver Star Medal that hung around her neck represented the culmination of a military career that had redefined what it meant to be both a healer and a warrior. The citation, read aloud by General Morrison, captured only the bare facts of Elena's actions during that snowy night in the Hindu Kush. For gallantry in action against an armed enemy of the United States, while serving as a combat medical specialist, Sergeant First Class Rodriguez distinguished herself by exceptional heroism. When her unit came under intense enemy fire during a high-value target capture mission, despite being responsible for treating 2 critically wounded soldiers, Sergeant Rodriguez simultaneously engaged and eliminated 4 enemy combatants with precision rifle fire, enabling her unit to complete their mission while preserving American lives. But Elena knew that the medal represented something far more complex than the official citation could capture. It represented the synthesis of 2 seemingly contradictory identities: the woman who had dedicated her life to healing, and the soldier who had become one of the most effective snipers in theater. More importantly, it represented her discovery that these identities were not contradictory at all. They were complementary aspects of the same fundamental commitment to protecting innocent life. The audience in the Pentagon ceremony included Elena's parents, who had flown in from Texas to witness their daughter's recognition; her mother, the nurse who had taught Elena to value every human life, wore an expression of pride mixed with concern. She understood better than most the emotional toll of the choices Elena had been forced to make. After the ceremony, Elena found herself in conversation with Master Sergeant Williams, her instructor from Fort Benning, who had been invited to witness the recognition of one of her most successful students. "How do you feel about the medal, Rodriguez?" Williams asked as they stood in the Pentagon corridor, away from the crowds and cameras. Elena considered the question carefully. "Honestly, Master Sergeant, it feels strange to be recognized for killing people, even when I know it was the right thing to do." Williams nodded understanding. "That's exactly the response I'd expect from someone who deserves this recognition. The day you stop feeling conflicted about taking human life is the day you should stop being a sniper." Elena's parents joined them, her mother embracing her daughter with the fierce pride of someone who understood the moral complexity of her daughter's service. "Mia," her mother said quietly, "I want you to know how proud I am of you. Not just for the medal, but for finding a way to save lives even in the middle of war." "Mom, I killed people," Elena replied, the weight of that reality still heavy in her voice despite the months that had passed since her last deployment. "You protected people," her father corrected gently. "You used every skill you had to preserve innocent life and keep your soldiers safe. That's what heroes do." The conversation was interrupted by the approach of Lieutenant Colonel Harrison, who had also been invited to the ceremony. He carried with him a folder that Elena recognized as containing official documents. "Rodriguez, I wanted to personally deliver these to you," Harrison said, handing her the folder. "Your promotion to Sergeant First Class is effective immediately, and you've been selected for the Advanced Tactical Medicine program at Walter Reed. You'll be helping to train the next generation of sniper medics." Elena opened the folder and scanned the documents inside. The training position would allow her to pass on the hard-won lessons of her deployment experience while continuing to serve in a medical capacity. It represented a perfect transition. From active combat operations to a role where she could multiply her impact by training others. Sir, I'm honored by the selection, but I have to ask, will I still be able to deploy with operational units if needed? Harrison smiled. Rodriguez, you're too valuable an asset to keep permanently behind a desk. The training position will be your primary duty, but you'll maintain readiness for special operations that require your unique skill set. As the reception continued around them, Elena found herself thinking about the wounded Taliban commander she had treated during that helicopter ride months earlier. Intelligence reports indicated that he had indeed survived his cardiac surgery and had provided valuable information that led to the disruption of several planned attacks against coalition forces. The lives she had saved through medical treatment that night included not only American soldiers, but also Afghan civilians who would have been targeted in those planned attacks. The moral arithmetic of warfare remained complex and often painful, but Elena had found peace with her role in it. She understood now that being a sniper medic wasn't about choosing between healing and killing. It was about using every available tool to preserve innocent life and protect those who couldn't protect themselves. Elena, her mother said as the evening wound down, what's next for you? Elena looked around the Pentagon's Hall of Heroes, at the portraits of soldiers who had made extraordinary sacrifices in service to their country and their fellow human beings. She thought about the students she would train, the lives they would save, and the moral challenges they would face. Next, I teach others to do what I've learned to do, Elena said finally. I help them understand that being a warrior and being a healer aren't opposite things. They're both ways of protecting what matters most. Elena Rodriguez had entered the army as a young woman who wanted to save lives. She was leaving combat operations as a seasoned soldier who had learned that sometimes saving lives required taking them. But more importantly, she had learned that the moral courage to make those difficult decisions, combined with the skill to execute them effectively, was the true definition of heroism in modern warfare. The woman who had once been only the medic had become something unprecedented, a guardian angel who carried both mercy and justice, healing and protection, compassion and precision. She had proven that the greatest warriors were those who fought not out of hatred for their enemies, but out of love for those they protected. Walter Reed National Military Medical Center buzzed with the controlled energy of America's premier military hospital, but Elena's new classroom was unlike any other educational space in the facility. The Advanced Tactical Medicine Training Room combined state-of-the-art medical simulation equipment with precision marksmanship ranges, creating an environment where future sniper medics could learn to seamlessly integrate life-saving and life-taking skills. Elena's first class consisted of 8 carefully selected soldiers, each already expert in their primary military occupational specialties, but identified as having the rare combination of medical aptitude and exceptional marksmanship ability that made effective sniper medics. They came from different backgrounds: Special Forces medics, Navy corpsmen, Air Force pararescue specialists, and conventional Army medics like Elena had once been. Ladies and gentlemen, Elena began her first lecture, studying the faces of soldiers who reminded her of herself years earlier. You are here because you've demonstrated excellence in 2 seemingly contradictory skill sets. My job is to help. You understand that they're not contradictory at all. They're complementary tools for preserving life. Staff Sergeant Michael Torres, a Special Forces medic with 3 combat deployments, raised his hand. Sergeant Rodriguez, how do you reconcile the medical oath to first, do no harm, with the reality of engaging human targets? Elena had expected this question. It was the same one that had haunted her during her own training. Torres, tell me about the last time you treated a wounded enemy combatant. Torres thought for a moment. 2 months ago in Syria. Enemy sniper took shrapnel from one of our airstrikes. I patched him up, got him stabilized for evacuation. Why? Elena asked simply. Because he was wounded, and I'm a medic, Torres replied, unconsciously echoing the same words Elena had used in that helicopter over Afghanistan. Exactly. You treated him because preserving life is what we do. Now imagine that same sniper had been actively engaging your team, picking off your soldiers one by one. Would you have engaged him with your rifle to stop the killing? Torres nodded slowly. Of course. Same principle, Elena continued. Sometimes preserving life means healing wounds. Sometimes it means stopping threats before they can create wounds. Both actions serve the same moral imperative: protecting innocent people. The training that followed was unlike anything the students had experienced. Elena had developed a curriculum that seamlessly integrated advanced medical procedures with precision marksmanship, teaching students to transition between roles with the fluidity that combat operations demanded. One particularly challenging exercise involved treating simulated casualties while simultaneously providing overwatch for evacuation routes. Students had to demonstrate the ability to maintain 4 lines and monitor vital signs while engaging targets at ranges exceeding 600 meters. Exactly the kind of impossible scenario Elena had faced repeatedly during her deployments. Petty Officer First Class Sarah Martinez, a Navy corpsman attached to a Marine unit, struggled initially with the psychological aspects of the training. During a debriefing session after a particularly challenging simulation, she approached Elena with concerns that sounded familiar. Sergeant Rodriguez, I joined the Navy to save lives. This training is asking me to become something I'm not sure I want to be. Elena saw herself in Martinez's uncertainty. Tell me about your last deployment. Afghanistan, with a Marine infantry unit. I treated a lot of wounded Marines, saved some lives I'm proud of. Did you ever lose anyone because you couldn't reach them safely? Because enemy fire prevented evacuation or treatment? Martinez's expression darkened. Lance Corporal Johnson bled out in a compound courtyard because we couldn't get to him. Enemy sniper had us pinned down for 40 minutes. What if you could have eliminated that sniper? Elena asked gently. What if you'd had the training and equipment to neutralize the threat and then treated Johnson? Martinez was quiet for a long moment. He might still be alive. That's why you're here, Elena sighed. Not to become a killer, but to become more effective at preserving life. Elena's reputation as an instructor grew quickly throughout the military medical community. Her unique combination of combat experience and teaching ability produced graduates who were immediately in high demand for special operations units worldwide. But more importantly, her students were saving lives in ways that traditional medics couldn't. 6 months into her teaching assignment, Elena received a letter that reinforced her belief in the program she was developing. It came from Sergeant Torres, who had completed the course and deployed to Africa with a special operations unit conducting counter-terrorism operations. Sergeant Rodriguez, the letter read, I wanted you to know that the training you gave us has already saved American lives. Last week, our team was conducting a hostage rescue when I found myself in exactly the scenario prepared us for. I was treating 2 wounded hostages when enemy fighters began engaging our extraction point. I was able to eliminate 3 threats from my treatment position while maintaining medical care for the hostages. Both hostages survived and are returning to their families. I don't think that would have been possible without your training. Elena kept that letter in her desk drawer, along with dozens of others from graduates who had found themselves in situations where their hybrid training made the difference between life and death. Each letter represented validation of the program she had helped create and the moral framework she had developed for integrating healing and combat skills. But Elena's most significant contribution came when she was asked to testify before a congressional subcommittee examining the effectiveness of specialized military training programs. Her testimony would help secure funding for expanding the Sniper Medic program across all branches of the military. Members of the committee, Elena began her prepared remarks, The soldiers I train are not just better marksmen or better medics. They are more complete guardians of human life. They understand that sometimes the most compassionate action you can take is to neutralize a threat before it can harm innocent people. Representative Johnson, the subcommittee chair, asked the question that Elena knew was coming. Sergeant Rodriguez, critics of this program argue that we're creating soldiers who are desensitized to violence, who can kill and heal with equal emotional detachment. How do you respond to those concerns? Elena had prepared for this question, but her answer came from the heart rather than from any briefing notes. Sir, I would argue the opposite. The soldiers in this program are hypersensitive to the value of human life precisely because they understand how easily it can be lost. Every shot they take is informed by their medical knowledge of what that bullet will do to human tissue. Every medical intervention they perform is informed by their understanding of the violence that caused the injury. She paused, thinking of her students and the moral weight they carried. These soldiers don't kill and heal with equal emotional detachment. They kill reluctantly, but precisely when necessary to preserve life, and they heal with all the skill and compassion at their disposal. The emotional burden they carry is actually greater than that of traditional soldiers because they see both sides of the equation, the cost of violence and the value of healing. The committee was impressed by Elena's testimony, and the funding for the expanded program was approved unanimously. But more importantly for Elena, the hearing provided a platform to articulate the moral framework that had guided her own journey from conflicted medic to confident sniper-medic. After the hearing, Elena was approached by Dr. Sarah Chun, a military psychologist who had been studying the mental health outcomes of soldiers in specialized programs like Elena's. Sergeant Rodriguez, I've been following the psychological profiles of your graduates, Dr. Chun said. Interestingly, they show lower rates of PTSD and moral injury than soldiers in traditional combat roles. Do you have any theories about why that might be? Elena considered the question. I think it's because they have agency in both directions, she said finally. Traditional combat soldiers can kill but not heal. Traditional medics can heal but not eliminate threats. My students can do both, which means they never feel helpless. They always have tools to preserve life, whether that's through medical intervention or threat elimination. Dr. Chun nodded. That aligns with our psychological research. Having multiple tools for addressing threats seems to provide a sense of control that reduces trauma and moral injury. As Elena's second year as an instructor began, she received orders that would take her program to the next level. The Pentagon had decided to establish a permanent sniper medic training center, with Elena as the director. The facility would train not only American soldiers, but also allied forces from countries facing similar security challenges. The new facility, established at Fort Bragg, represented the institutionalization of Elena's innovations. It included advanced medical simulation labs, precision marksmanship ranges, and psychological training facilities designed to help soldiers navigate the moral complexity of their dual roles. Elena worked with medical ethicists, military chaplains, and experienced combat veterans to develop a comprehensive curriculum that addressed not just technical skills, but also the emotional and spiritual challenges of the sniper medic role. First international class at Elena's new facility included soldiers from 12 allied nations, each facing unique security challenges that required the kind of tactical flexibility that sniper medics could provide. British Special Air Service medics, German KSK operators, Australian Chassé corpsmen, and Canadian JTF-2 medics joined American Special Operations personnel in what would become the gold standard for specialized military training. Captain James Morrison of the British SES approached Elena during the first week of training with a question that revealed the global significance of what she was teaching. Sergeant Major Rodriguez, he said, Using Elena's new rank that had come with her promotion to program director, we've been dealing with hostage situations in West Africa where traditional approaches aren't working. The terrorists are using human shields and operating from medical facilities. How do your graduates handle the ethical complexities of engaging targets in those environments? Elena had been expecting questions like this. The moral challenges that American forces faced in Afghanistan and Iraq were being replicated around the world as terrorist organizations adapted their tactics to exploit Western reluctance to cause civilian casualties. Captain Morrison, let me ask you a question, Elena replied. What's the greater ethical violation, allowing terrorists to use hospitals as weapons, depots because you're afraid to operate in medical facilities, or conducting precise operations that neutralize threats while preserving the medical mission? Of those facilities, Morrison considered this. I see your point. By refusing to act, we're essentially allowing terrorists to corrupt medical facilities and endanger both patients and medical staff. Exactly. The sniper medic approach allows for surgical precision in these environments. You can eliminate specific threats while simultaneously providing medical care to any civilians who are wounded in the process. It's actually more ethical than traditional approaches because it maximizes preservation of innocent life. Elena's international students brought with them case studies from conflicts around the world that validated the need for her training. French special operations medics described situations in Mali where they had been unable to treat wounded civilians because of sniper fire they couldn't effectively counter. Israeli Defense Force medics shared experiences from Gaza, where their ability to provide medical care was constrained by their inability to neutralize threats to evacuation routes. One of Elena's most successful international students was Lieutenant Marie Dubois of the French 1st Marine Infantry Parachute Regiment. Dubois was a combat medic with extensive experience in Africa and the Middle East, but she had never received formal marksmanship training beyond basic military requirements. Sergeant Major, Dubois said during a training exercise where she had successfully eliminated 3 targets while treating a simulated casualty. This training is revolutionary for French forces. We have been sending medics into situations where they can heal, but not protect themselves or their patients. This changes everything. Elena watched Dubois work, seeing in her the same transformation she had experienced years earlier. Lieutenant, what's the most important thing you've learned so far? Dubois paused in her work, considering the question while maintaining pressure on a simulated arterial wound. That healing and protecting are not separate missions. They are the same mission approached from different angles. The success of Elena's international training program led to requests for her expertise from unexpected sources. The United Nations asked her to develop protocols for medical personnel operating in peacekeeping missions where traditional rules of engagement often left medics vulnerable to attack. The International Red Cross sought her input on protecting medical facilities in active conflict zones. Most significantly, Elena was invited to address the Geneva Convention's Review Conference, where international humanitarian law experts were grappling with the ethical implications of medical personnel who were also trained for combat operations. Distinguished delegates, Elena began her address to the international audience. The question before us is not whether medical personnel should be trained for combat. They already are, by necessity, in modern conflicts. The question is whether we will give them the tools to be effective at both missions, or continue to send them into harm's way with inadequate preparation. Elena's presentation included case studies from her graduates' deployments, showing how sniper medic capabilities had actually reduced civilian casualties by enabling more precise operations and better protection of medical facilities. The data was compelling. Units with sniper medic support showed 40% fewer civilian casualties and 60% better success rates in medical evacuations under fire. Professor Hans Müller, the German expert in international humanitarian law, raised a critical question. During the conference, Sergeant Major Rodriguez, how do we ensure that medical personnel with combat training maintain their protected status under international law? Elena had worked with military lawyers to address this exact concern. Professor Mueller, the key is maintaining the primacy of the medical mission. These soldiers are medics first, snipers second. They engage in combat operations only when necessary to protect their patients or complete their medical mission. Their protected status remains intact because their primary purpose remains medical. The conference ultimately endorsed Elena's approach, leading to modifications in international humanitarian law that explicitly protected medical personnel who engaged in defensive combat operations to protect patients or medical facilities. Elena's influence extended beyond military circles when she was invited to speak at Johns Hopkins Medical School about the ethical challenges of providing medical care in conflict zones. Her audience included future doctors, nurses, and medical researchers who would work with organizations like Doctors Without Borders in some of the world's most dangerous locations. The principles you learn here about preserving life and alleviating suffering will be tested in ways you can't imagine, Elena told the medical students. You may find yourselves in situations where providing medical care requires making hard choices about protecting your patients and yourselves. The tools may be different, but the moral imperative is the same: preserve life by any means necessary. After her presentation, Dr. Rebecca Martinez, a trauma surgeon who had worked in Syria and Yemen, approached Elena with a question that revealed the broader implications of her work. Sergeant Major Rodriguez, do you think civilian medical personnel should receive training similar to what you provide to military medics? Elena considered the question carefully. Dr. Martinez, I think anyone who chooses to provide medical care in dangerous environments should have every tool available to protect their patients and themselves. The specific tools might be different, but the principle is the same sometimes. Saving lives requires taking difficult actions. The conversation highlighted a truth that Elena had discovered through her years of experience. The moral challenges of preserving life in hostile environments weren't unique to military personnel. Civilian medical workers faced similar ethical dilemmas, and the framework Elena had developed for navigating those challenges had applications far beyond the military. 5 years after establishing the International Sniper Medic Training Program, Elena stood in her office at Fort Bragg, surrounded by letters, photographs, and commendations from graduates who had carried her teachings to conflicts around the world. The walls told the story of a revolution in military medicine and in the understanding of what it meant to preserve life in hostile environments. A way evolution in military medicine and in the understanding of what it meant to preserve life in hostile environment. To preserve life in hostile environments. Knock at her door interrupted her reflection. Master Sergeant Patricia Williams, Elena's former instructor who had become her deputy director, entered with a folder containing the latest graduation statistics. Elena, Williams said, using the informal address that their friendship now permitted. The numbers from this quarter are remarkable. We've graduated 847 sniper medics over the past 5 years, and their units report 78% fewer preventable combat deaths and 65% better mission success rates compared to units without sniper medic support. Elena reviewed the statistics, but her attention was drawn to the personal stories attached to the data. Lance Corporal Davis had saved 12 Marines while eliminating 6 enemy fighters during a complex ambush in Syria. Petty Officer Chun had successfully evacuated 37 civilians from a terrorist-controlled hospital in Somalia while neutralizing the threats that would have prevented the evacuation. Staff Sergeant Williams, a different Williams, named for Elena's mentor, had prevented a massacre at a refugee camp by eliminating 3 suicide bombers while treating victims of a previous attack. Each story represented the practical application of the moral framework Elena had developed. That preserving life sometimes required taking life, and that the soldiers best equipped to make those difficult decisions were those who understood the value of what they were protecting. "Patricia," Elena said, looking up from the reports, "do you remember that conversation we had during my training about the ethics of being both a healer and a warrior?" Williams smiled. "You asked me how to balance the medical oath with the reality of combat operations. I think I finally have a complete answer to that question," Elena continued. "The balance isn't between healing and killing, it's between action and inaction. The moral violation isn't in taking life to preserve life. The moral violation is in failing to act when you have the capability to preserve innocent life." Elena's reflection was interrupted by a call from the Pentagon. General Morrison, who had presented Elena with her Silver Star years earlier, was calling with news that would mark another milestone in her extraordinary career. "Elena," the general said, "I'm calling to inform you that you've been selected for promotion to Master Sergeant and assignment as the Senior Enlisted Advisor for the Army's new Combat Medicine Modernization Program. You'll be working directly with the Surgeon General to revolutionize how we think about medical support in future conflicts." Elena felt a mixture of pride and responsibility. The new position would allow her to influence military medicine policy at the highest levels, ensuring that future medics would have every tool necessary to preserve life in combat environments. "Sir, I'm honored by the selection. Will I be able to maintain involvement with the Sniper Medic program?" "Elena, you'll be writing the doctrine that governs the future of combat medicine. The Sniper Medic program will be just one component of the revolutionary changes you'll be implementing." After ending the call, Elena walked to the window of her office, which overlooked the training ranges where her current students were learning to integrate precision marksmanship with advanced medical procedures. She watched a young sergeant barely older than Elena had been when she first picked up a rifle in that Afghan firefight successfully engage a target at 800 meters while simultaneously monitoring the vital signs of a simulated casualty. Elena's journey from a conflicted young medic to the architect of a new approach to military medicine had taken her places she never could have imagined. She had killed enemy fighters and saved their lives. She had trained soldiers from dozens of countries to navigate the moral complexity of modern warfare. She had influenced international law and military doctrine. Most importantly, she had proven that the greatest warriors were those who fought not from hatred of their enemies, but from love of those they protected. Her phone buzzed with a text message from her mother, who had watched Elena's career with the mixture of pride and concern that only a parent could feel. "Mia, I saw the news about your promotion. Your father and I are so proud of the woman you've become. You've found a way to heal the world, even in the middle of wars." Elena smiled, thinking about the young woman who had enlisted wanting only to save lives, never imagining that her journey would lead her to redefine what it meant to be a healer. She had learned that compassion could be expressed through a precisely placed bullet just as surely as through a perfectly sutured wound. She had discovered that the greatest act of mercy was sometimes the elimination of those who would show no mercy to others. As the sun set over Fort Bragg, Elena made a decision that would shape the final phase of her military career. She would accept the promotion and the new assignment, but she would also ensure that the moral framework she had developed, the understanding that healing and protecting were complementary aspects of the same mission, would be embedded in every aspect of future military medical doctrine. Elena Rodriguez had begun her career as only the medic. She was ending it as the architect of a new understanding of what it meant to preserve life in a dangerous world. Her legacy would live on in every soldier who understood that the greatest warriors were those who fought to create a world where warfare was no longer necessary. The woman who had once struggled to reconcile her roles as healer and sniper had become living proof that the most effective guardians of human life were those who possessed both the skill to mend what was broken and the courage to stop those who would break it. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe. And turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.